Okay, welcome to Academic Writing Lecture number 1414. Let me get ready our lecture. In a moment's time, we will start. Okay, in lecture number 14, what we want to do is to talk about grammar and writing style. We started talking about writing a style last week through the showing of a video whereby we looked at how writing is supposed to be different for academics and academic purposes as well, in contrast to writing for colloquial and easy reading circumstances. In academic writing, it is much more formal in terms of its writing, um, and we looked at some of the differences between formal writing and informal writing. Today, we want to continue to talk about grammar, a very important topic, grammar and some of the mistakes that people normally make grammatically and stylistically in academic writing. So we'll just want to begin right now with prayer, and then we will proceed. Father, today, as we looked at the nitty-gritty of language and how we can be better writers, Father, we thank you that you have called us to this ministry of writing, whether it's for school here in the college or whether it's a lifetime calling to be an academic. Father, we pray that you will humble us, not to take pride in our own prowess, but to remember that, Father, you are the one that has created language, and we should use language and writing as a tool to love you, to preach your word, to spread the gospel to those who do not know you. So, Father, be with us as we talk about grammar and writing styles, and we ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. I want to go through at least a few things with regards to grammar. Some of this may be new to you. Some of this may not be new to you. If you have taken ESL classes, I hope you have at least taken a class whereby we looked at some of these grammatical rules. Some it's just good revision because they come into very handy. These should not be stumbling blocks to you when you become an academic or when you're writing papers for college for your degree. Um, they should not be a stumbling block. They should be very easy for you as you go through your college career. Okay, there are a few things to take note of grammatically. Subject and verb agreement. Subject and verb agreement simply means that um, it's one of the common grammatical mistakes that many writers get confused over. The mistake is usually because of the confusion over the number of subjects and the verbs in the sentence. If you have a singular subject, the verb that follows need to be singular. If you have a plural subject, the verb needs to be plural. Um, but the main problem is when is the subject a plural and when's the subject not a plural. That's when a lot of students get confused and they do not think about the verb. This is very common, especially for Asian students, speaking as an Asian myself, because in the Chinese language, I'm not sure about other Asian languages, but in the Chinese language specifically, we do not have we do not pluralize verbs. So this is a little bit more difficult, I can understand, for some Asian students, but this is something that we need to learn ourselves and do it correctly. Okay, incorrect usage here. There is too many grammatical errors in this sentence. Why is this wrong? It should be there are many grammatical errors. The reason why people put there is many grammatical errors is that people do not see the grammatical, because the grammatical errors comes later in the sentence. They think that there is no need for the verb to agree with the subject, but that's wrong. Regardless of where the verb is, whether it's before or after the subject, it needs to tally with the subject. The subject is plural. The verb needs to be plural. So the correct usage will be there are many grammatical errors in this sentence. Grammatical errors is plural, so there needs to be the verb needs to be are and not is. Even though the subject comes later than the verb, it needs to also connect. So you need to see the connection. Many people don't see the connection. They only think grammatical errors are, and then um, but they don't see it when it comes after the verb. Okay, so be careful about that. Okay, class activity here. I will give you 5 minutes, and I want you to go through these examples, write them down in your notebook, and answer the questions. The crowd is or are becoming increasingly unruly by the moment. So write that down in your um, exercise book or paper, and then in 5 minutes, we'll go through this. Okay. Oh my God. So a few more minutes, and then we should be ready to answer these questions. A couple more minutes. Oops. So one more minute, and then we will talk about the answers. We do not stay angry, but we do want to show mercy. Because concerning the transgression of the okay, a few more, half more minute. Okay, let's look at these examples that we have here. The crowd is or are becoming increasing unruly by the moment. You can say, well, the crowds is plural, so it should be are. But is it? When you talk about things like that, it's a collective, a plural. That means when it's a collective plural, you consider as one crowd. So when you have a collective plural, it is usually followed by a singular. So the crowd is becoming increasingly unruly by the moment. The manner in which you spoke to those people are or is disrespectful. Okay, this is a little bit more tricky because what is the subject here? Is it the people, those people, or the manner in which you spoke? It's you spoke, right? Is disrespectful. The Caesars is or are in the top drawer. Are in the top drawer. One in four organization report or reports using this type of software. Is it four organizations or one? One, so reports. Neither John nor Mary was or were at school. You have two people, but when you have neither, what do? The subject is plural because neither John nor Mary, so it's singular, was at school today. Anything is or are possible with God. Anything is possible with God. Hillsong worship is or coming to church this Sunday. Is. It's a collective plural. Okay. The second problem that many students have is sometimes known as sentence fragmentation. A sentence needs to have a noun and a verb. Fragmentation should happen only when a new idea is introduced. Other than that, there should not be any fragmentation. So if it's one whole idea, then the sentence needs to be as a whole. Let's look at this example. Incorrect use. You should exercise because it is good for your health. Here it's broken into two sentences. Why is this wrong? Because it's a sentence fragmentation. Um, It's one big idea and it's related. You should exercise because it's good for your health. So the correct usage is that you shouldn't fragment a sentence when it's one full idea. You only fragment a sentence when you introduce a new idea. You should, for instance, these two parts are all talking about the same idea, but exercising and how exercising connect to your health. So they should be joined together. You should exercise because it is good for your health. So be careful about sentence fragmentation. Another mistake that often people commit in grammar, in terms of grammar and writing, is incorrect use of similar words. It's the using of incorrect word for the wrong purposes or wrong purpose. There are several words in English language that may sound similar, but they have different meaning. These mistakes are not merely spelling errors, but most of the time, the writer is usually not aware that the words, though they look similar, are actually different words with different meanings. So it's very important to know that some words may appear very similar, but they are different. I'll give you an example. I'll give you some examples. Okay, I want to give you another 5 minutes to work on this second class activity for this day. Write down for yourself these examples and try to attempt them. I'll give you the next 5 minutes, okay, to work on this. So 5 minutes, and we'll come back to talk about this. Who's that you got? Okay, let's look at this example here. She refused to accept his apology. Which accept? The first or the second? Second, right? Accept with the A. Accept means the first one means exception. Um, these are all good fruits except for the last batch. Okay, so accept is to make exception, while ACCEP that means to accept, means to receive this apology. So the both words are very similar, but are easily confused. Second question example: Colorado is farther or further from New York than Iowa. It's the first one, farther. With the AR, it signifies distance, physical distance. Further, usually it's more metaphorical distance. Furthest from the truth, for instance, is used metaphorically. Farther usually is used in terms of measuring distance. The new law prohibiting texting while driving will go into effect or effect tomorrow. Both are similar, but what would your answer be? With the E, right? With the A, it is affecting the new law. This new disease is affecting my handwriting, for instance. Okay, he took my advice or advice that as and put his house up for sale. It is advice. ADVICE. Advise is when I advise you to drop the legal case against the president, for instance. Okay, next example. I always manage to lose my loose fitting tank top. Uh, LOSE usually LOOSE usually is about things being loose, like you wear a loose tank top. My shoelaces are loose. While loose LOSE is more um you forgot where you put things. So I managed to LOSE my LOOSE fitting tank top, right? Do you think that Pepsi is better than or than Coca-Cola? It's THAN. THEN is a signifying a time. Is it a chronological or time marker? I was 15 years old then, so it's THEN. While THAN is a comparison that you use in comparing. Okay. Okay, so here is the second example, second a set of examples I want you to look at. I'll give you another 3 minutes to look at this. I'll give you more time. Okay, many citizens with higher education were trained abroad and they immigrate with the E or the I permanently. What's the difference between the two? An immigrant means to leave your country, the old country. An immigrant with an E means somebody who has left his or her country. Immigrate or immigrant with an I means a person coming in. So many citizens with high education were trained abroad and they often immigrate permanently. So which is it? Are you leaving or are you coming? You are leaving, right? So it is an I. The illicit use of drugs is a problem in our cities. Which one is the I? The illicit sale of drugs um, is a problem in our community. He saw no reason to appraise or prize the community of what has happened. Appraise, right? Appraise means to revalue. Apprise means to tell. They chose its neighborhood for its or its schools. It's the first one. Is a shortened form of it is. So are you saying they chose the neighborhood for it is schools? No, that's wrong. So it represents possessive. So they chose the neighborhood for its ITS schools. Okay, another another example. I'll give you a few more minutes to work on this. I'm trying to give you as many examples as possible so that you are more and more familiar with these. Okay, I'll give you another 5 minutes to work on this next lot of class activity. Okay, let's deal with this. Before falling asleep, Kim lies or lays about a bracelet on the table. Lays, right? On her table. So Lays. Your clothes will wrinkle if you are not careful with the drying cycle you choose. So you are your YOU's apostrophe R is you are, while YOUR is suggests possessive. That's your clothes. Your clothes will wrinkle if you are. So the second one, YOU apostrophe RE, are not careful with the drying cycle you choose. The lyrics contain biblical allusions. It's allusions. Illusion simply means um, uh, thoughts, fascinating thoughts, or thoughts in your brain, that illusions. When the painting, when painting the kitchen cabinets, Anna picked a color that would complement her floors. Which one? The first one is to compliment, to say good things about somebody. The second one is to match things. To the milk has passed PAST or PASSED its sale by date. PASSED is the past tense of to pass. PAST refers to an event before time, an event that has just passed. So the milk has actually passed PASSED its sale by date. Okay. Number four, it has been very important in academic writing to know when to use single or double quotes when you are quoting a source. For instance, you want to say, Charles Haddon Spurgeon says, and then you want to open inverted commas to quote what he has to say. Or Jesus said, and then which do you use? It depends. Are you writing for an American publication or a British/Australian publication? American publication usually begin with double quotes when you are citing somebody or when somebody is speaking in a text. So if you're writing to an American audience and it's an American school, or you are writing for an American published article journal, you would say, he said softly, double quotes, I have a headache, full stop or period, close double quotes. If you're writing for British English, you should say, he said softly, comma, open inverted commas, just single quote, I have a headache. Don't put your period or full stop. If you're writing in British English, you close with a inverted comma, but the single one, and then your full stop or your period goes after your quotation marks. You see? You see what the quotation mark is? It's after the single quote. Okay. Let me do another example. In American English, many dream images were characterized as raw. Notice the comma comes immediately after word W, RAW, comma, close inverted commas. Because it's American, you use double and then open inverted commas, double quote, powerful. As soon as you have the word L, you close with comma, double quote, and evocative. Okay. In most academic writings, even if you have like three things here before the end, most scholars, it's not all scholars, most scholars would recommend that you put a comma before the word and. Okay, so many dream images were characterized as raw, comma, powerful, comma, and evocative. Okay, this is American way of writing. Okay, British way. Many dream images were characterized as raw. Raw before the R is a single quote, and then your closing quotation comes after W, then your comma. Notice the difference. The comma comes after the single quote. You see how it's different from the American. Powerful, and then the comma comes after the closing single quote, and evocative. And the full stop period comes after the single quote. So you see the complexity of using double and single quotes. It depends on whether you're writing for a British American audience, but the comma, the place of the comma is just as important. Okay, so that's very, very crucial when you're writing. So the placement of quotation marks often creates problems. They belong outside periods and commas. Single quotation marks should be used to indicate quotations within double quotation marks. Note the following examples. Okay. So if you're using American English, you need to use double quotation marks if you're quoting. So double quotation marks. Correct punctuation is vital. Close quotation marks. I am not a pendant. So it is the pendant that because you're using it figuratively, you use quotation marks. But here it is very important because here you are using two sets of quotations. You are saying he says he is not a pendant. So the first set, the most outer set you use, this is American, double quotation marks to open the quotation. So double quotation mark, he says he's not a, because pendant is used as a figurative language, so you need to use quotation marks. But because you already used double quotation marks, here you have to use the single quotation mark. Okay, so now you have to use the single quotes for then PEDANT because it's American writing, full stop or period, and then you close with a single quotation mark, and then you close this quotation with a double quotation mark. So you begin to see if you use double quotation marks, the quotation that you use within the double quotation mark should be single. Okay. If you're writing in British English, your outside quotation will be single quotation marks, and you have to use anything in between, you use double in between. So you just reverse it if you are using British English. You see? So it makes things a little bit more complicated. Okay. Where do you then put a question mark if you are in terms of where should the question mark be? The question mark, however, belongs outside the quotation mark unless it is part of the quote or the parenthetical material. Therefore, this is the example. Why had he said, I'm too tired to respond? If the question mark is not part of the quote, it should be outside the quote. So it's why had he said, comma, the quotation here, because it's American, you begin the double quotation. I'm too tired to respond, close quotation, because that's your quotation. And then because the question mark is not part of your quotation, not part of the original quotation, it should be outside. But if your question, if the thing that you are quoting has the question mark, then it should be inside. So do you understand the word pendant? Question mark. He asks, what can I do? Do because it's part of the sentence structure because it's not a quotation because it's part of the quotation. Here the question mark comes within the quotation. Okay. So what about the use of colons and semicolons? Semicolons and colons are also used outside the quotation marks. For instance, Westerholm wrote the article Letter and Spirit. Then you have your colon, the foundation of Pauline ethics. So if colon and semicolons should be outside the quotation marks. Okay, quotation marks should not be used for block quotations. For a block quotation, you don't use any quotation marks at all. Sometimes you want to quote a whole chunk of material. For instance, this is an article that I've written on Spurgeon. I want to quote a chunk of material from Spurgeon, starting with the Gin Palace. Uh, um, because I'm quoting a huge paragraph, you don't use quotation marks because you're already indenting the quote, such that you're pushing the quote inside. So if you have used a block quotation, don't use quotation marks. Quotation marks are only quotes within the paragraph, within your text, then you use quotation marks. Okay. And you should always use semicolons or colons and question marks if they're not part of the text outside the quotation marks that you use. Okay. And then with regards to British English and American English uses two, while British English only uses one. Okay. 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 The next thing I want to talk about is the use of the comma versus semicolon. When do you use comma and when do you use semicolon? A comma is used to separate items in a list, but it does not distinguish between two independent sentences from each other. So, comma simply marks out separate items in a list. Jesus is a king, comma, priest, comma, and friend. I recommend you to use the word comma before and most scholars would advocate for that. A semicolon is the correct punctuation mark used to use in place of the comma because both clauses are independent, with the second clause providing an explanation for the first. So you only use semicolon if you are having two different independent clauses, but because the two independent clauses are related to each other, such as one will explain the second will explain the first, then you use a semicolon. So here you use a semicolon. Smith had never ridden on the back of a camel, semicolon. He tried out of curiosity because they both are related. Although they're different clauses, but they're related. They explain, the second clause explains the first, you use semicolon. You use comma to distinguish between items in a list, but you use semicolon to join two independent clauses together if they are related to each other. Uh, so Smith had never ridden on the back of a camel, so he tried out of curiosity. Here you use a comma because they are not two independent clauses anymore. So he tried out of curiosity is not an independent clause by itself because of the word so. So here you join it by a comma. So you know the difference now between comma and semicolon? Okay. So next lecture, I want to finish off by looking at number 6, and that's the use of commas. Um, we'll look at that next lecture. Okay, well, getting into some nitty-gritty things about grammar, it's good to get to know or reacquaint with them again because they'll come into handy when you write your uh your papers. But we'll stop there and we'll come back to talk about this next lecture. Okay.